Hello and welcome to June. It is Pride Month and it's my favorite month of the year because we get to celebrate what has been known nowadays as the Alphabet Mafia, or better known as the LGBTQ plus community. Pride Month is a very important month. President Obama made that pretty obvious in 2009 when he officially renamed June as Pride Month. It celebrates the history of the LGBTQ plus community, originally in the U.S., but also internationally and worldwide. The LGBTQ community has always been there, but we just, as of the past couple hundred years, actually been recognizing their existence. Before we kick off our little craft today, I always want to acknowledge the fact that Pride Month is very important. Rainbows are awesome, glitter's awesome, party's awesome, but it's also very important to recognize the history of Pride and what it stands for. I don't want to be a killjoy and be like, don't go have fun, because I want you to. I just want you to also know what Pride Month is about. So a few fun facts. Like I said, the LGBTQ community has always been there, even if they haven't been a cohesive community. In 1867, Karl Heinrich Ulrichs, who was a German lawyer and journalist, he actually was the first person to speak out for gay rights, or at least the first known person in modern history to speak out for gay rights. In 1892, the term bisexual was used for the first time. And in 1924, the Society for Human Rights became the first gay rights group in America, and that date right there in that group has actually become pretty much one of the most important groups in Pride history, because that year and the beginning of them pretty much transcended everything that came after it. In 1962, the first state to decriminalize homosexuality is Illinois, which doesn't mean gay marriage is legal, it just means that it's not illegal to be a homosexual or gay. And then in 1969, the Stonewall riots began the legacy of Pride Month. And so I want to clarify that the Stonewall riots, while they inspired Pride Month, it was actually not the first Pride. You constantly see on social media that the first Pride was a riot, but it actually was not. The Stonewall riots began because police were raiding the Stonewall Inn on some shady pretense. So a lot of the gay bars in New York City at that time were run by the mafia. Stonewall Inn was not unique of this. They were run by the Genovese family, and because of being run by the mafia, they typically did not have a legal liquor license. And then just considering the crazy amount of discrimination happening against gay people, the police used to use that as a pretense to raid these establishments and organizations. So in 1969, they raided the Stonewall Inn, like that had happened many times throughout history. And pretty much the gay community and the residents of the neighborhood and the people who frequented the Stonewall Inn got sick of it, and so they actually threw a riot. They rioted and protested back that night. 13 people were arrested. A lot of patrons are harassed, especially the transgender and drag queen patrons who were dressed of the sex that was seen as opposite of them. And there was a very weird law in New York at that time that made that part of a very gray, illegal area. And they were actually stripped in the bathroom to see what sex they were so they could be charged or not with a crime. So obviously the gay community was not okay with this, and so they resisted against it, and it started the very modern version of Pride Month. The following year, in 1970, Christopher Street Liberation Day was made to commemorate what happened at the Stonewall Inn a year before, so that people wouldn't forget the treatment that the LGBT community would faced from society and from police. So the Pride was made as a commemoration of the Stonewall riots, but the Stonewall riots were not the first Pride. And some more fun facts. 1973, the American Psychiatric Association removed homosexuality as a definition of a mental disorder. So up until that point, you were deemed crazy if you were part of the gay community, and you could have been institutionalized. In 1975, Minneapolis became the first city to protect transgender people by law from discrimination. 1979, the first national gay rights march is held in Washington, D.C., so it's not just, the march that happened throughout the 70s. It became an actual national thing of the pride we know today. In 1980, David McReynolds becomes the first openly LGBT person to run for president. And then in 1989, speaking internationally, Denmark became the first country to legalize same-sex partnerships. America did not follow until 2015. In 2004, American legalized same-sex marriage. Massachusetts legalized same-sex marriage. They were the first state to make it legal. Vermont in 2000 was the first one to recognize civil unions, but that is not the same thing as same-sex marriage. Connecticut in 2005 legalized civil unions. But then, like I said, it wasn't until 2015 that same-sex marriage became legal throughout the entirety of the U.S. And part of that was in 2012, Proposition 8 in California is ruled unconstitutional, which was a proposition that blocked gay marriage. And so it was removed. And I remember back in 2015, it was fought back against, but they lost. And so now, as we know, all of the U.S. allows legal gay marriage. So as you can see, it's been a very long storied history going all the way back to 1867, and honestly maybe even 1828. The term crime against nature was coined in the U.S. Criminal Code, and that became a reference to homosexuality. So since 1828, 1867, we have come a long way, and Pride Month is now celebrated here and internationally. And while only 14% of the world, and that's a small number, 14% of countries actually have legalized same-sex marriage, we are a very unique country in that we are part of that 14%. So Pride Month is meant to celebrate it and celebrate a lot of the liberties we get. Even though we have a long way to go, we're at least well on our way. So I want you to remember that for Pride Month, and I also want you to just celebrate your joy, and just keep being you. So we are going to move on to the craft, and I hope you enjoy, and I hope you can share with me what they come out looking like. Thank you for coming along. Hello and welcome for another edition of Alex's super awkward art videos. Today we're going to do a very quick pour painting tutorial. I'm actually not going to end up taking up much of your time. Pour painting's really quick and easy. I really love pour painting because I like art, but I'm not good at it. So pour painting doesn't really take much talent other than just being willing to get super dirty, because I find that every time I do this I inevitably end up covered in paint. So I'm going to start by showing the work surface. I covered my dining room table in garbage bags because this really does make a mess. And you're going to want to use plastic cups instead of your cups from the house, because I have ruined quite a few drinking glasses doing this. So pour painting is essentially a pour mixture or pour medium mixed with acrylic paint. You're not going to want to use tempera paint for this because that's a very eggy, temporary kind of paint. Tempera paint you mostly use with like toddlers and stuff like that because it's not as toxic when you eat it and it gets off of everything easily, whereas acrylic, it's latex based and it'll actually stay and mix well with your medium. Pouring mediums, we're going to use Flood Floetrol. It's pretty much, I chose this one just because it came highly recommended and because it's cheap. Something you're going to notice if you decide to really like this and start shopping around for stuff is that pour painting can be really expensive. I've used Liquitex before, which is the really expensive high quality stuff, and I mean you get what you pay for. It's high quality, but considering the fact that it's pour painting, I don't really care very much. I'm not trying to make, sellable stuff. Flood Floetrol seems like it works perfectly fine. You can get it at hardware stores or you can buy it on Amazon for super cheap. And we're also just gonna use some Craft Smart paints. You can buy these at Michael's for super cheap. These, I'm gonna give you guys these so you don't have to worry about it, but just for the future, if you ever feel like buying some, they're just little acrylic paint bottles that you use for basic crafts. The ones I'm using today are Pixis. I'm not entirely sure what brand this is. It came off of Amazon, but these are the ones I'm going to use today because these were from my own personal collection and they got kind of the darker quality that I want for my own thing. We're also going to use a tongue compressor. You can buy these at the pretty much a pharmacy anywhere or an art store. And we're also going to use these plastic cups, and these ones have the ounces and milliliters printed on it. So another pour medium you can use if you really want, you can use water. And you can also use Elmer's glue, not the classroom Elmer's glue. There's a type of Elmer's glue called All Glue, I believe. It's a really strong version of Elmer's glue. You can use that and it will work. There's a lot of different methods you can use for pour painting. We're just doing the very basic method today. I've seen people use silicone and other products in their pour, which makes it so you get cool bubbles and cracks and all this other cool stuff. You can always also use like the strainer that you find at the bottom of a sink, and it makes some really cool patterns. Today, we're just gonna mix it and we're just gonna dump it. And so we're gonna use all the colors of the rainbow because it's Pride Month, which is my favorite month of the year. And so we're gonna start. I actually have pre-mixed all of mine except for one color, and we're gonna do purple because purple's one of my favorite colors. So you want to make sure you get the ratios right with this, because if you don't, you're going to have some really weird textures on your surface. And especially if you end up pouring on canvas at some point, you could very well bust through the canvas and cause it to just get totally destroyed if your pour medium's too heavy. I've done that before. It's not fun. So it's going to be 1 ounce of Floetrol to ½ an ounce of paint. So ounce light, I'm just going to fill it up, and unfortunately this will be a harder thing for me to show you, but got it at 1 ounce. You're also going to make sure you mix or stir or shake your Floetrol or whatever your medium is really good before you use it, because it gets like a weird oily substance on the top, and you need to make sure that gets mixed in really good with the rest of it. And then you're going to do a ½ an ounce of the paint, and acrylic paint's, acrylic paint's really thick, so. And of course it wouldn't be an awkward video without me smacking my phone with the paint bottle. And so that's about 1½ ounces, wish I could show you, but, and we're gonna mix it, and we're gonna make sure it's incorporated really good. And so because we're doing straight up Floetrol and paint, it's gonna be a little thick, and so we're gonna add some water to it. My orange I didn't have to add water to. I'm not sure why. You're gonna wanna make sure it's not too watery either, because it can get really runny and muddy and your colors will just blah together, and then you're just gonna have a brown pride flag instead of a rainbow one. So there we go. That's the consistency right now, which is, you know, not too bad. We're gonna add just a little dash of water. And I remember hearing online, you do not want to do more than 20% water in there. You don't want your mixture to be more than 20% water, and that's when it starts to get to that really gross muddy point, and it just starts to blend into each other. Another thing you can use instead of acrylic paints, also this really cool acrylic pour medium ink. That was the first thing I ever used when I did acrylic pouring, and you get some really cool high quality prints out of it. It ends up to being like just a very smooth glossy finish, but that stuff is also very expensive, and I discovered the hard way, a little goes a long way with that stuff. So if you do ever end up using the acrylic ink, don't put a lot in your cup, or else you're just gonna end up having a whole really dark mixture. So we got it the consistency we wanted. these are what I got for us to do for our pour painting. Thought they were cute, and they are wall hangs, so you can give it to someone for Pride as a celebration thing, or you could put it on your front door. They were really cheap at Michael's. I also have canvas that you are going to have the choice to choose from, so whatever you end up doing, but the process is the same. So this is what we're going to use. If you're smart, which I'm not because I forgot to bring home tape, you may want to tape this down so that it doesn't get in the mixture. But again, I'm not smart. I forgot tape at work, and I'm home right now. And so another thing you're going to want to do that I learned the hard way is you're going to want to put something down to elevate your item. Because if you don't, you're going to end up having your item, your painting, stuck to a surface. Which is something I did the first time I did this. And then when you pull it up, because it's latex based, you're gonna tear off the whole entire print. So learn from my mistakes, elevate it. I didn't watch a tutorial before I did this, bad idea. So I'm just adjusting my camera, it's a little difficult. And so there's a lot of different methods you can do for pouring. Like I said, you could get one of those strainers you put in the bottom of a sink. I would not use the one in your parents' sink right now. They'll probably be very angry if you use it for a pour painting project because it will never be the same again. So you could do that. You could pour it on one color at a time, but I'm going to show you the most basic thing that most people do when they do pour painting. And I pretty much categorize it as being absolute chaos because all you're gonna do is pour everything in the same cup as each other. So I'm gonna do it in rainbow order. I'm gonna take my red cup. I'm gonna just dump the orange in there. And you can like dump it in like cool fancy ways. I'm just gonna be super lazy and just dump it straight in. Like you can, woo, or just dump it right in. Then we're gonna put the grain in. And this is a ton of paint. If you're thinking, wow, that's a ton of paint, it is a ton of paint, but you need a ton of paint to do this. So, oh, and there's paint dripping all over the camera stand. That's fine. And there we go. Now we got the pretty rainbow going. And I'm gonna give it a couple seconds to settle. I got some on my surface, but it's fine. It looks really cool. Some history on the pride flag because, you know, I want you guys to learn something while you're in here instead of just being like, ooh, rainbow's cool, pretty. They're pretty, but there's a history behind the pride flag. The first pride celebration was actually a year anniversary of the Stonewall riots. So the first actual pride celebration was in 1970. The pride flag didn't get invented until 1978. And it was made by a gay drag queen artist named Gilbert Baker. And he did it at the urging of Harvey Milk, and I'm sure you've heard that name before, but Harvey Milk was our first openly gay elected official in the US, and he really wanted Gilbert Baker to make a pride flag because he, you know, determined that the gay community really needed a symbol for their community, and so Gilbert Baker was like, why not a flag? Flags are a huge thing of pride. I mean, look at the American flag. So he made the original pride flag based on the actual rainbows you see in the sky. It originally had 8 stripes, not today's 6. It had pink, which like a hot pink, which stood for sex. Red stood for life, orange for healing, yellow for sunlight, green for nature, turquoise for art, indigo for harmony, and violet for spirit. And they flew that flag on June 25th in 1978 at the San Francisco Gay Freedom Day Parade. So again, this is 8 years after the first Pride. But there were production issues. You know, some of those colors like hot pink and indigo and turquoise were really difficult to come by for producing fabrics. So they cut those colors and it turned into the rainbow flag you know today. But it didn't become the official symbol of the gay community until 1994. And today, in our modern day society, we've actually been changing the pride flag. And we have made one that is all-inclusive for the trans, black, indigenous, person of colors community. You've probably seen it. It's the rainbow with the triangle in the corner. So, you know, the pride flag's always changing and is an international symbol for the gay community. And, you know, rainbows are really cool and pretty. but you gotta respect them, right? So then this is the next part of pour painting, probably the most likely part for creating a giant mess and disaster. We're gonna dump it. The best way to do it, honestly, you could just pour it over on your surface and call it a day. I like to do it this way. It's just gonna be a little harder to see because of how close the camera is. I like starting, putting it on top, turning it over, letting the color settle for a bit so you don't just get a bleh of one color. Oh, it's so cool looking on the side. And then we're just gonna lift it up. And I'm like doing this, making little swirlies. And then you're just going to essentially just rock it around the surface. And you're gonna spin and turn it and make sure the whole entire surface is covered. And while this is drying, like whatever you're looking at right now for this, that's not gonna be the final product, I hate to tell you. So don't get too attached to whatever it looks like when you're done spreading it across the surface, because while it's drying, gravity will do its thing and it will pull a lot of them off the surface and move the colors around a bit. And see, there's a lot of dots forming. So if you used silicone in this, it would do this really cool thing where it would like cause these bubbles in there. And some people use heat on it and it causes like this really cool cracking marble effect. We're just doing a standard one. If you're gonna do any of those things, totally try. Be very careful when you try it, because you know, silicone can be toxic if not used properly. And if you have little siblings, you don't want them getting a hold of it. And this always happens to me where I run out a bit. This actually works very well on wood. I didn't know if it would. I've never done it on a wood surface before. Oh, that's really cool looking. This reminds me of Lisa Frank. Which I think Lisa Frank is coming back around in popularity, so I'm sure you actually know what I'm talking about. Oh yeah, this looks like every lunchbox I ever owned in the 90s. And so, I'm a little disappointed there's not more purple, but it's pretty regardless. And so I covered the whole surface. So what I'm gonna do, and you can see my surface is a disaster, which is why I said, please make sure you put something down, because your parents are not gonna be happy if that's what their coffee table looks like, unless they wanted you to redesign it for them. If so, awesome, rock on. And so there we go. Let me pick up the phone so you can see the full product. And there you go. That is what it looks like right now. I will post pictures of what it looks like when it dries, but you're gonna want to probably leave it overnight. Like right now, at this time I'm filming, it's about 4 p.m. I'm gonna leave it until the morning. And it could take a while to dry because that's a really thick surface. You can't tell, but that's just like a thick layer of paint. I'm probably gonna put the words love on it, and you know, you can do pretty much anything with the surface. So yes, if you have any questions, definitely put them in our comments. And when you finish, definitely put them in our comments, because I would love to see what you guys do, or email them, or tag them on social media, or do whatever it is the internet does. So thank you for watching. Bye. So this is the finished product of our pour painting activity. As you can see, the colors came out a little darker than how they started, but they're still really cool looking. If you want your colors to be lighter, I would say paint a base coat of white on it, but otherwise it looks wonderful. And I think I lied. It did not take 24 hours for this to dry. It took about 72 hours, so you're gonna need a few days to let it dry. And I wouldn't move it much in that time, because as you can see right here, I got a little fingerprint where someone touched mine when it was wet. So I hope you enjoy the activity, or you enjoyed it if you already did it, and happy Pride Month, everyone.